I always tell people I've been a nurse since I was 4. I had a sister who was born extremely premature at 28 weeks, and my mom was taking care of her, and I was always with my mom taking care of her. And my first experience with nursing was in the NICU, going to visit my little sister and watching the nurses take care of her and showing me and my mom how to take care of her. But business major first because I didn't think I can do nursing, and wound up in nursing anyway. Started as a volunteer home health aide, and then went to licensed vocational nursing school, then RN school, then master's degree, then doctoral degree. Most definitely a long journey. I even think it is a lifelong journey for me. Financial reasons. It was always very difficult to pay for school. Whenever I would get, grants to cover things because of grades, that usually would kind of push me along. And it was always like a doctor or healthcare provider that was encouraging me to continue my nursing education. And usually the roadblocks I would experience were within my nursing programs that I was at. So dealing with student concern or even faculty to student concern, delays, several moments where, I just felt unheard and just kind of wanting to quit. That literally happened in almost every program I was in, but luckily persevered and continued to move forward, just to kind of reach back and help other nurses that might be struggling to get through. Well, I feel it's definitely a system-wide challenge. There's a lot of preconceptions of BIPOC students before entering programs or nursing programs. And so if we ever express concerns, a lot of times it's kind of, just either don't say anything about it or kind of fall in line, or either quit. So you usually stop going to school or just kind of fall in line with whatever the status quo is. And it didn't matter the institution, didn't matter the curriculum design, none of that mattered. It's just the system kind of that we're in. What I've come to see now is that I'm kind of the safe haven for students when they experience things. They'll come in and they feel comfortable talking to me about the things or the experiences that they've had, and I can kind of comfort them and kind of teach them how to advocate for themselves, and then even advocate on their behalf if they don't feel comfortable doing so.
Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed that video. We are excited to welcome our second panel of the day with leaders in healthcare and direct care worker to discuss how we can achieve our goal of a diverse nursing workforce. I'm now going to hand it over to John Mathewson to start us off. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. You ready? All right, we're going to have a little fun here today, I hope. In fact, I know we will. This is a great group of panelists to be here with us. My name is John Mathewson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for AHIP. AHIP is one of the participating sponsors for this particular event, and we're really glad to collaborate with the AARP. I love history, and when I look back at the history of AARP and AHIP, actually, we have similar background in terms of how far back we go. Our precursor organization started in the 40s. So we've been around quite a long time, but under different names. And today we are here talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, this is very important to our industry. A number of our members have just done some truly inspiring things across the spectrum as we start to look at how do we move things forward. Of course, there's a long ways to go. We have a lot of things to do. But just know that there are a lot of people working very hard to try to make a lot of things happen in a good way for the people of America. Along with diversity in nursing, AHIP is also looking at the issue of nursing shortages, and I believe there's going to be a webinar coming up in the spring with AARP also, where we're going to collaborate on that issue. And so to move along on into the panel itself, I want to start with just a personal story to set a tone, and it's about nursing and the power of inclusion. And so the first one is real small. I'm from a small town, 3 stoplights. We had 7 siblings. We were all delivered by nurse midwives. I think I turned out pretty good. But the next is more contemporary, and that is I'm also a prostate cancer survivor. 18 years, I'm still here, I'm healthy. And thank you. So we find out I'm diagnosed about 3 months after we got married, surprise, and I get treated. And so when we're in the hospital, and I remember it was late after the treatment, my wife decided to stay with me. And she's hungry. And so everything's closed, didn't know what to do. She's not a patient. But there was a black nurse who looked at her and said, "Honey, you're pregnant, aren't you?" Like, what? We hadn't told anyone during that time, you know? No one knew. How did you know? And she said, "Look, I've been doing this a long time. Let me help you." And so she did. So we felt like we had someone we could trust. She was paying attention to us. We were being watched over. All of this is new. We're newlyweds. We're pregnant. I just had surgery. That was so important. Now, I don't know if they teach that in nursing school, but right at that particular moment, that was what we needed. And so I just thought that would be a nice vignette to share about what we've experienced in our own life about the power of nursing. And so we're going to move on from that to our first panelist. And this is so appropriate because when people think about nursing, they often think about registered nurses. Well, we are fortunate to have with us here today a licensed practical nurse. And when you look at the nursing universe, there are about 4 million professionals that make up the nursing universe between registered nurses and LPNs. And they are a very, very important part of it. And so we're fortunate to have with us here today Toshiba Mangione. And she is going to introduce herself. She's going to tell you her organization she works with, her title. But she also is going to share with you a fun fact about herself and why she got into nursing. Toshiba?
My name is Toshiba Mangione. I'm from Rochester, New York. I'm employed with Anthony Jordan Health Center. I am a licensed practical nurse there, a perinatal nurse case manager. Oh, one fun fact about myself. Well, I love to dance, but the funny part about it is I have 2 left feet. So I'm always offbeat, and I'm always in my own world. I have my own rhythm in my head. So the electric slide, I will throw you off. And the reason why I got into nursing, I always wanted to be a nurse. I knew once I graduated high school that I wanted to become a nurse. But life happens. I became a mom and married and, had to focus on my family. Now that majority of my children are adults, I had the opportunity during COVID to go to nursing school, and I took advantage of that. So I'm definitely proud of myself for becoming a licensed LPN.
All right. Next, we have Mary Jo Jurdy, and she's going to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, John, and thank you, AARP, for hosting such a wonderful event today. This is great. As mentioned, my name is Mary Jo Jurdy, and I'm a Senior Vice President at this United Health Group, and I lead the Center for Clinician Advancement. It's quite an honor and privilege to help support we're over about 110,000 clinicians within our organization. My fun fact, I like your funny fact. I should have had a funny fact. That's funny. Mine's just fun, I guess, because I, too, was from a small town, farm girl from Iowa. And my fun fact is I never would have thought I would have traveled to 26 different countries at this point, and I got about 3 more for next year. So I just love travel. It is the experience in different cultures, et cetera. And why I went into nursing was on a farm in Iowa, parents who taught truly the value of giving back and of being of service to others. I just learned that at a young age. And my 8 brothers and sisters, I got 3 nurses and a physician in our family, so it was I say it's in the water. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we have Anna McKee.
Hello, and thank you for including me on this panel. I want to give a shout out to Wynn, who a year ago we started a discussion about the relationship between diversity and addressing disparities, and she and her team made this happen. And the Joint Commission is very proud to be part of this. I am Anna McKee, Anna Pujols McKee. I am the Chief Medical Officer, and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Joint Commission. And Deanna and I were hoping you were going to forget the fun fact question.
No, not going to happen.
No. So, thank God that someone spoke about dancing, because my family is from Puerto Rico, and I'm a pretty good salsa dancer.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And by the way, I have a treatment for the left feet.
Okay, thank you.
Wait a minute, and why did you get into healthcare?
Well, forgive me, I'm a physician, but I'm very pro-nurse. And my chief nurse executive officer said I could represent him today. I've always had the dream of not just going into healthcare, but into building healthcare systems, and I've lived my life dream, so I'm very fortunate. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Deanna.
I am Deanna Minus Vincent. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Social Justice and Accountability Officer for RWJ Barnabas Health in New Jersey. And I want to thank AARP, and particularly Susan Reinhart, who sits on our board. So she's the one who recruited me here. And fun fact, first I realized I'm not very fun because I couldn't think of a fun fact. So I don't know if this is a fun fact or just a fact, but my parents moved from New Jersey back to Delaware, I guess in 2014. And my dad is very involved in history. So when other kids were going to Disney, we were going to Battlegrounds. So we were trying to get him involved in a new activity, and we are Delaware Nanticoke. And we traced our roots back to the 1400s in Delaware. So that's a little bit of a fun fact, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah. And why I got into healthcare. So early in my career, I worked in maternal child health planning, and then I went into state government and the nonprofit sector. So I worked a lot in systems change. So I came back to healthcare 4 years ago to try to re-engineer how healthcare and social services work together.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So I'll give you quick my fun fact and why I got into healthcare. My first fun fact, if for any of you who are sport fans, I'm a Green Bay Packers shareholder, and I have nothing. I have very little to cheer about this year. Why I got into healthcare. My father passed away when he was 51. He was a smoker. He had throat cancer. So in my little boy mind, I decided I'm going to grow up, I'm going to become a physician, and I'm going to find the cure from cancer. I'm going to kick cancer's butt. Little did I know that I would end up being a prostate cancer survivor anyway. So that's not my testimony. What is my testimony is that I am here with all of you. We are championing for health care, for access, for inclusion across this great nation, and I trust that my father is proud. So that's why. So, it's time. We can have our chat, Toshiba, and it's important for folks to hear from just the element of the front lines, the kinds of things that are going on in your lens, your perspective. Could you tell us a little bit about your health center and your role and who you serve in this particular population?
Okay. Yes, the health center that I work for, Anthony Jordan Health Center, is a historic health center within Rochester, New York. It's more than 100 years old. It's one of the first federally qualified health centers established in the nation. We do serve, it's basically located in the neighborhoods where the most pressing needs exist. We provide service to the underserved, the underinsured individuals.
Okay, and your role? Talk a little bit about your role.
For me, I am a licensed, as a perinatal licensed practical nurse, I am a nurse case manager there. My role is to promote the overall well-being of pre- and postnatal patients through education and counseling. I follow the patient care from the beginning of her pregnancy until term. I help advocate and address any gaps in cares and barriers and try to help to resolve them. I act as a liaison between the provider and the patient.
In my prior life, I served on a board for the DC Primary Care Association, which is an association for the FQHCs in Washington, DC. So important. Talk about the role of diversity among your peers and how that helps improve the care they receive.
This is the first time in my work history that I've really worked for an organization that is predominantly Black staff. Patients respond well to a diverse healthcare staff. When the patients can see themselves represented in the nursing staff, patients tend to become more engaged, more transparent. The healthcare professionals, such as myself, can reflect the demographics and diversity in the community. The patients begin to feel represented and understood. It's important that the patients know that they have someone there that can advocate for them, that can respect them, that can support them on their behalf during their, impressionable time of need.
So I'm going off script, but it's okay because you have the answers. You're living it. What makes a difference every day when you're doing the things that you do? It's a predominantly Black staff. Your patients come in and they need you. What is it that you feel is happening that's making this difference?
I feel that my presence being there for them during the time, you don't wake up and say, I want to go to the doctor today. No one does that. So when you're coming in, the majority of our patients come in, being Black, they come in because they are ill. There's a problem. They don't really have, they don't come in for preventative treatment, preventative services. So just being there and seeing them, that we can have them leave in better shape than they came in, offering support, offering services, whether the outcome is positive or negative, we're able to still support them and be there and provide resources for them within the community.
When they come in, are they just talking to you about health?
No, they talk to me about everything. I know about the lotto. I know what happened with the neighbors, the dog, the son, the grandchildren. I know it all. I get all the business.
So you got the number?
The lotto.
You got the number?
I forgot to play the number, but he did give me a number, but I knew I will forget to play that number.
Oh, that's so important. So you have folks from a lot of different disciplines that are here and online, researchers, regulators. I heard some amazing words: trust, standards, things that are very, very powerful. And at the end of the day, it has to all make a difference, real time.
Yes.
And so what they really want to know is real time, what's going to make a difference from your lens?
In real time, what's going to make a difference is, I think if we all can, take a look in the mirror at our own self and reflect on our own biases and try to wake up every day and to practice being non-judgmental, we will all be a better person, because we all have something that we struggle with every day, and it's really not fair for us to judge anyone else by the color of their skin, by their financial standards, how they come in, how they look, because we don't know what happened to that person, what triggered them to be in the situation that they're in. No one wakes up and say, I want to be homeless today. No one wakes up and say that I can't support my family today, or I may harm myself today. So, we want to be there to be support, to help them during their time, and try to be proactive, with them, so we can firsthand see that this can be a trigger, something's an issue. That's my job, to advocate for them, to provide support, to jump in there before something happens.
I'm over here grinning really hard. All these questions, they're all off script. Toshiba said she was nervous. I knew, look, just let her go for it. She's going to keep it real. She's going to tell you. Yes. Now, I want to invite my other panelists to comment on some of her real talk in real world.
Well, my comment is I'd like to abdicate my time to you so we could hear more of the authentic self that you're bringing today. But your comments of just be yourself and be open to the biases. And as I mentioned, I was from a farm in Iowa, and I'm like, I went to college and I didn't know the world out there. And it's not until you stop and assess that everyone is bringing a very different lived life to our work. So I really resonated with that. So excellent thoughts. Thanks.
So my comment is, John, do I have to follow her? Oh, you do? Okay, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. But I thought your comments were so on point. And I think when we talk about biases, we're not being honest about the fact that all of us have biases. And even if you're African American, Hispanic, Native American, you could be looking at another Native American and bring your biases to the picture. So our challenge is for everyone, and I love the way you brought that out. Thank you.
And I love the way when John asked you, are you only talking about healthcare? It's about taking the time and having the conversations and making people feel human, because I think that's the piece that's missing. If you come in and you're abrupt and you only ask the 1, 2, 3 questions, and I still feel kind of on edge, then you don't have that real exchange. And I think that's where we need to build and bridge the trust. And I think it's how do we build relationships with people, person to person, as an individual. And I think that's what we're trying to find.
Thank you all for your comments, and thank you for being a champion and leaning forward.
Thank you, John.
Absolutely. All right, Mary Jo.
Got to follow that, huh?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We bonded a little bit in the chat we had coming on. She's from a family of 8. I'm from a family of 7. Can I share the other part?
Absolutely.
So I have my father's W-2. It's almost the same as what her family was making when she was growing up. $3,000 a year for a family of 7. Hers is $3,000 for a family of 8. She fist bumped me.
Yeah. Because here we are today.
Yes, we are.
And that's what I think is amazing of having the experiences that we had at a young age brought us today to be able to really advocate for others and do good and really assure that we're representing those who have a life that's not like others. So thank you for sharing that.
The short and long-term plans of United.
Oh, okay, we got into work now?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
could talk all day.
So, as you heard, I represent United Health Group, kind of a large organization. I think everyone knows who they are. And the mission, that's what I have been really drawn to United Health Group. As a nurse, I thought, would I ever get into the business side of healthcare? But when you have a mission of really thinking that, we are helping people live healthier lives and make the health system work better for everyone, change can happen. So in the magnitude we have, it's our duty and it's our responsibility. So I heard a statement of health equity is a measure of your mission. And it stuck with me. And I'm like, yes. So if we get up every day thinking our mission is about health equity. So on the short term, we have, I'll just give you a couple examples. There's a lot, but most organizations have learning systems. You got your training, you got your CEs, you got all that. That's not enough. So what I thought has been very beneficial, and it was short term, it took us maybe a while to get it up, but it's up, living very well, is a learning system that is not at the individual level. It's also at the team level and also at the manager level. So if you can allow team resources to talk about health equity, diversity, and inclusion, et cetera, you're going to be having a very different dialogue than you doing it by yourself. So I just really think about, in the short term, get your learning system up and think about 3 different levels of that learning system. The other short term, and I look at short term might be 1 or 2 years. I think we heard earlier, you have 50 years is my long term. But right now, my short term one, and I actually want to pull up, and was so excited to see this in the handouts, is our short term was to take a roadmap and the toolkit that was developed through AARP Foundation, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the Center for Championing Nursing in America, put together this amazing toolkit. So in our short term, we took the toolkit. We were part of the early brainstorming that was happening. So we were up front early on and said, okay, we got this toolkit. Well, is it just going to sit on a desk somewhere? How do you really apply it and use it? So we took it apart. 9 recommendations, 57. We ended up with 20. I said, no, that can't have 20. You got to have 4. No more than 4. Where's the, who said steps, 1 step at a time. So we narrowed it down to really thinking about what could we do in the recommendation about health equity, social determinants of health, informatics, and what am I missing? Oh, burnout, wellness, and the well-being. Again, we talked about the population of nurses, exhaustion, burnout. We had some initiatives already, but once we took those 4 in the short term, we stood up very, very quickly some better learning systems. We knew where we had some gaps. We actually have now a pledge for health equity. And so we ask for all new hires coming in. We also bring it into every training that this pledge is, we make it known on a regular basis. Just becomes in your DNA that you're hearing about your pledge for health equity. And that, I think, was brilliant. We had the grassroots. We took a group of volunteers, we actually voluntold, asked them to come forward and say, we had about 50 in our organization who came up with, okay, different work groups of these 4. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Yes, let's take that forward. An award for health equity. Brilliant. We already had a system in place for awards, but have a very specific one in that. So those are some of the examples of very short term that I think, I know have made a difference, and the visibility to be much more real. But the long-term one, that's the one that we're very, very proud of, and it might not have heard a lot of information about it, but in June of this year, our United Health Foundation had announced a $100 million funding opportunity. And in that funding opportunity, you probably haven't heard, well, how's it going to happen? What's it going to look like? It's the largest single philanthropic opportunity that we have had at United Health Group. And it's pretty significant in that we are looking at a 10-year plan. Long-term is why I said not 50, but it's long-term. We will have 10,000 what we consider, future workforce in the health careers, either being not in healthcare now, or either upskilling a clinician who is in. So if, let's say, a nurse practitioner wants to get her psychiatric certification, how can we offer scholarships and funding for the 10,000? And these are the 10,000 that are in underserved areas within our country. They are not obligated to be working at United Health Group whatsoever, but we want to really infuse the opportunity for our underserved health workforce with this funding opportunity. So again, like my $3,000, my family, I couldn't have afforded to go into nursing. So now if we as an organization like United Health Group, actually the foundation, can bring forward that opportunity for 10,000 over 10 years. So we're excited to see what the impact's going to be. We're launching many initiatives. We've had some very similar process, but this is in a very different magnitude. So stay tuned.
Good comments. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask a question, but I want the other panelists to engage you on this as well. United's a large company. How do you all make it real? I have to feel it at the end of the day.
Oh, it's a great question. I tell people I don't feel like it's large. I am connected to that mission. I feel the voice and the value. We talked about being valued for your clinical discipline as a nurse. They respect the feedback. We're at senior levels within the organization, and that's where I feel like we can be representing those who might not be at the table. I mean, that's my responsibility and duty, but it's being aligned with the goals and the strategies, and then everybody gets around it, and we make it happen. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm famous for going off script. Deanna, any comments on Anna?
The one comment, and I'll take this opportunity, because I think the insurance industry has a tremendous opportunity in looking at what is the insurance industry needing to do to help address health equity. And right now, everybody in this room is here because it's in our heart and we know it's the right thing. But tomorrow, there will be another thing that will come back that will be another priority that will be in our heart, and it'll be the right things, and things fade. I want every chief financial officer of every healthcare organization saying, addressing disparities is financially better for my organization. And I think that this is one of the things that I'm hoping the industry, particularly the insurance industry, gets behind this argument. And I know you're going to take them there.
Yes, I will. And I'll respond to that comment because I missed a point of one of our recommendations was the social determinants of health. If an insurance organization who has data all over the place can't identify where we have gaps in the social needs of our population, who can? So that is an area that I have been impressed. I actually called one of the gentlemen and said, what was last year's numbers and what are this year's numbers on how we previously did not have a system, a mechanism to actually track how many referrals are going out into the community to help those who had gaps in care that had a connection back into that local community. And we actually helped put a whole ICD-10 code together so we could track social determinants of health community referrals. So it was 4 million last year and 4.5 so far this year. So that's where I think a magnitude of an organization like United or other insurance can take your competencies that you have and understand the financial implications and put those two together. It's our obligation. Thanks.
And do let me share this just from the insurance industry perspective. If you go to a conference now with insurers, I don't care what the topic is, I guarantee you there are 2 words you're going to hear on that topic. One is going to be equity, and the other is going to be social determinants of health.
Yeah.
It is just pervasive. It's the order of the day. It's well overdue. I mean, many organizations have engaged in this in years. The lexicon just wasn't there necessarily for it. But they were still doing the work. And so now there's a lexicon for it and you're doing the work. And we all know that there's a lot more to be done, but the focus is certainly there across the industry. I mean, there are people just like me, like Mary Jo, and we're here in the room. So it's no different. There are millions of us. Anything you want to add to the conversation, Toshiba?
I also worked for United Health Group.
Oh.
Yeah, I was laid off in October of 2019. Yeah, which led me to go to nursing school to why I'm here today. But I must agree, I was a community health worker. I was a telecommuter, so I serviced.
State plan, probably.
Yeah, I serviced Medicaid and Medicare population in Western New York, so I would commute between the different counties. And it is a great organization to work for. I was sad to be laid off during that time, but I guess there was another purpose for me at that time. But they are very innovative organization, and they were working on bridging the gap, within disparities during the time that I left. And they
saw
were
that.
moving forward. So I was part of the innovation team that were working towards planning that.
Well, look at what you've done.
Yes.
Thank you. Your legacy there.
So footnote to all of you, when you put a panel together, you must have a kindred spirit to Toshiba on your panel. Absolutely. Make it real. Keep it real. All right. Next, we're going to have Anna McKee from the Joint Commission, who's also co-sponsoring today's program. And I have just a great deal of respect for the amount of work and what the Joint Commission does. In my prior life, I used to run a pediatric specialty hospital, and so the Joint Commission work was very, very important to us and a part of our lexicon and every day. But for what we're talking about today, why is this topic so important to the Joint Commission?
Well, this is the #1 strategic priority for the Joint Commission. I'm really proud to say that the organization has done 2 things. Internally, we've looked at the opportunities to improve our diversity, equity, and inclusion. But externally, we have a commitment to help our accredited organizations address healthcare equity. Our vision is that all people always will get the best care. That's been our vision. It's been out there. But now what we're trying to do is very specific. And in January of 2023, a set of requirements are going to come out that will really require every healthcare organization to put leadership in place, collect the data, address a disparity, and demonstrate impact. And to tell you the truth, everybody in this room is going, that's a great thing, right? But we have at least 4,000 hospitals across the nation, okay? And I'm not counting nursing care centers and ambulatory and all the other places that we accredit. And I like to think of our customers as under a bell-shaped curve. So we have organizations who have been doing this work, and we're learning from them because they've been progressive. And then we have organizations, and I would say this is the majority of them, who are saying, I know I need to do something. I just don't know what and how. And then we have organizations, and I'm going to quote some of the comments that we've heard from these executives, who are going, what's this talk about healthcare equity? We don't have a problem in our community. We treat everybody the same. What are you talking about? Well, our job is to deal with everyone under the curve. And that's what makes this work really challenging and interesting. Not only are we working and requiring the organizations to address it, but we've been bold enough to say, this is quality and this is about patient safety. And you cannot choose to address central line infections and not address disparities in healthcare. It's all been under the same umbrella for years. It is the sixth column that was left and forgotten, and everybody focused on everything else. So this, for us, is core to our mission in helping organizations improve quality and safety. And we are making that connection. We're making a bridge from quality and safety to disparities and having them addressed. And I, again, want to thank AARP, and for the other co-sponsors. I think we have a lot of work to do together, to be honest. And I think that we're stronger together, and I know that our hearts are all in the right place. But again, every big challenge in healthcare has a shelf life, because another one is waiting in the curve. This is the time, and we're kind of running out of time. And I just want to continue the sense of urgency that we've really got to find new ways to keep the heat on this topic and make progress.
Thank you very much for your comments. Remarks?
So you indicated that a lot, some of your hospitals are saying, we treat everyone the same, which we know doesn't really work because we're looking for equity. So how do you get them beyond that some populations need more without them saying, reverse discrimination and the like? So how are you getting them beyond?
Well, that's a good question, and I guess they have to prove it with the data. Their outcomes data has to prove that everybody is getting a good outcome, or, that there are no disparities. I would think it would be odd if we didn't hear that, because this is America, right?
Yep.
All right? So that's the reality. So I'm actually feeling better that they're articulating the denial or the absence of awareness, and it's our job to work with them. We got to work with them from at whatever point they are in. That's where we need to start.
My comment, I read, I don't know where it was, about these standards, the Joint Commission coming out for the accreditation process on health equity, and I'm like, wow, that's bold. So I just want to give you, again, acknowledgement of how bold it was, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what can I do? When you mentioned how do we align better, and my mind went to awareness, because do you think most nurses out there know about the fact that this is now coming?
Well, somehow the word gets around when the Joint Commission starts to put out new standards. I'd like to.
That's true.
I'd like to do it in a secret way one year, but it doesn't work that way. So there has been a lot of talk about it, and our new CEO, John Perlin, brought this as the #1 priority, and with a lot of energy, and I'm really excited about it. I wish we would have done it earlier, to be honest, but I'll take it for now, right?
Well, we can help.
And what's the launch date again?
They become effective January 2023, and on top of that, in July of 2023, we're planning something that is a secret, that goes beyond just standards, and stay tuned.
Oh, no. Maybe you'll
Oh, man.
panel.
I wish I had something to tease that out, but I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with that. Toshiba?
I think that's excellent
you know, just coming into the field of nursing, I think it's great to hold the organizations accountable because, you know, it's easier to put practice in paper and go to attend trainings and do in-services, and then you sign off and say, oh, I've completed it. But to demonstrate means a lot. So then you have to stand behind what you say.
Since you see the examples from all over the country, what headwinds are you concerned about? He worked really, really hard to put together the standards. They were very thoughtful. I know you're using broad stakeholder groups, lots of experts. What's the headwind you're concerned about?
Well, the headwind is that you can't regulate caring. At the end of the day, your heart's got to be in it. And we also recognize that these are very fundamental, foundational requirements, really to solve this problem, which, by the way, when it comes to maternal-infant health disparities, over 100 years of documentation. Not 20, not 30, over 100. So we do believe that this is going to be like you see many of these programs that are version 1.0 and then 2.0. We survey every 3 years. So in 3 years, we anticipate we're going to raise the bar and continue to raise the bar. The Joint Commission is learning, and so we're all in a learning phase, right? And so part of our job is to take those lessons learned, help feed them back to our organizations for all ships to rise over time. And some will continue to trail, but some are going to excel really, really well.
I love that, but I have to follow up because you hit something that's very important. My best friend is a family practice doc, old country style doc from Georgia. He really is. But he's one of the most caring physicians I've ever met. And so she said, you can't regulate caring. How do we get there? The nurse who saw me and my wife when we were there, she cared. Right. How do you replicate that?
That's the secret sauce. But we can, however, put out some requirements that are just foundational. And someone said it takes 50 years to change, right? Maybe hearts will change in 50 years, but they're going to be required to do something, okay?
I got you.
At the end of the day, they got to do something.
Great stuff. All right, thank you very much for that. And now, Deanna, it's time for us to talk about your amazing role. And one of the things that I noticed that when I saw her bio, she has a very long job title. She probably needs 2 business cards. And that means she never stops working. Executive Vice President and Chief Social Justice and Accountability Officer. I like that accountability part. Tell us about how the title just came into being and what the role is.
Sure. So I don't know how familiar you are with New Jersey, but New Jersey's pretty diverse. It's the second wealthiest state in the nation, and we had been fighting equity since the system started. We're a relatively young system. We're 6 years old, but we have hospitals that have been around for 120 years. We have 12 acute care hospitals, specialty hospitals, pharmacies. And in 2020, when our world changed, we were having uncomfortable conversations. And even though we had as I said, DE&I department, we had a social impact department of which I sat in. I was working on integrating social factors into the clinical setting, so social determinants of health screen for every patient. And our CEO said to me, well, I want you to dismantle systemic racism. And I said, sure. Because I've never said no to anything in my life. And I went home and said to my husband, what the hell have I done? Who thinks they're audacious enough to end systemic racism? But I am not a nurse. I've never been embarrassed to say that ever until I sat in this room among all these amazing nurses. But my career has been spent in systems change. That's what wakes me up every morning, solving problems, figuring things out. And I said, I could figure this out. So for the entire first year, we did a lot of talking, and I took a lot of flack for that. But you can't figure out how to solve a problem until you understand what it is. So we had over 190 focus groups. We had focus interviews. We looked at a lot of data, both outside our system and in our system. We looked at patient data. We looked at workforce data. And we came up with 4 goals. The first around our clinical and patient care, making sure every patient got equitable outcomes. So we looked at things like disparities, and we set performance metrics around those. We looked at the technology we use, so make sure pulse oximeters read dark skin the same as it read white skin. We looked at our adverse outcomes and safety outcomes, making sure that we weren't just a high reliable organization, but we're becoming a highly equitable and reliable organization. The second was around our workforce. We knew that we could not just bring in diverse candidates. That's what our existing DE&I team were doing. They were working on bringing in diverse candidates. But you could bring them in, but if you don't make them feel real good when they get there, they're going to leave. So making sure that our leadership reflected the communities we served. Looking at our disciplinary actions. Because when we looked at our disciplinary actions in the past, although 20% of our workforce were Black, 65% of our disciplinary actions were to Black employees. 45 across the board and 65 in some of our hospitals. That told me that our policies needed to change, and that we needed to not only have better policies, but have procedures. Because how me, a little brown girl from Trenton, New Jersey, interpret a policy is very different than how my colleagues up here interpret them. I use my sister retired at 48. I always have to throw that in because it makes me a little jealous. But she retired from a large telecom company that if I said it, you would know what it was. And she was fairly high up. And one day she called me and said, Deanna, what would you do if I told you that somebody called somebody the N-word? I said, fire them. She said, what would you do if I said it was a Black man? I said, well, did it have an A on the end or a hard ER? And she said, it was a Black man talking to another Black man. And I said, huh? But my answer has to be the same. It has to be fire them. And that's where we need to get to. It can't be wink, wink, nod, nod for every brown woman that I feel should be allowed an opportunity. So that's the level that we need to get to. Our third goal was around our communities. So looking at interpretation and translation services, looking to make sure that we're building social determinants of health screening into the clinical setting and making it as routine as height and weight. And for every person, not just deciding that we're going to ask Deanna when she's in her ripped jeans with her piercings and her tats. Because we don't know people's life stories. We need to ask everyone to make sure bias isn't built in and stigma. Because the one thing my bio doesn't say is that this year, I had surgery in April, I had a heart attack in May, and I lost my mother in June. So I also got to see the healthcare system from the other side. And we have long steps to take. We have a ways to go. So I saw that while we've been taking strides, there's some more steps that we need to go up the rung. So making sure that we are asking everyone, making sure that we're providing people the services and supports they need, and as much as possible using data, technology, and policy change to get people the services and supports. Because if we know we have a Medicaid patient, they're highly likely eligible for SNAP and HEAT and other things. So how do we make those systems work together without doing this? And the last goal 4 is around our operations. So making sure that we're contracting with entities that are also anti-racist. So all of our contracts now say we're anti-racist. We want to work with people who are anti-racist, and one of the ways you can show us is what is your board composition? What is your workforce composition? It's fine if it's homogenous today, but next year when you come back, it needs to look different. unless you're family owned or you're small. We're not trying to, we don't promote, you don't have to intermarry or anything. We're not, And then making sure that we're buying, hiring, and investing locally in our local communities. As the largest employer in the state of New Jersey, it is our job to stimulate local economies. So we take that seriously. And then really looking at policies. So for instance, when we did the first tour and we talked to frontline staff, we heard how nurses got mugs full of urine thrown on them, and I don't want this black nurse in my room. And I guess the old policy was the patient's always right. The patient's always right until the patient is wrong. So the first policy we put in place was a refusal of care policy that said no patient can choose a care provider, and care provider meaning dietary up to nurses, on the basis of physical attributes. So meaning that, unless gender and for religious purposes, but if you really don't want this black nurse to serve you and you are adamant and you are able to be transported, you can go to another healthcare system. We don't need the income quite that badly. And so we have 33 performance metrics, 15 of which sit on a scorecard. Every hospital helps us get to the systems metrics, and executive compensation is tied to those metrics. So I am the most popular girl in the system. But luckily, I don't do it for popularity. So that is what we're doing in New Jersey, and that's why accountability is in my title.
Amazing. Well, before I go any further, I'm just wishing you health and well-being.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And your continued mission, because we need someone out there doing what you do to make good things work. I want to turn it over to other panelists' reactions.
Wow, you shared quite a bit, and it makes me empathize and sympathize with you. I too became a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, and I'm thinking about all of the organizations who suddenly put people in those roles. To be honest, there weren't millions of people out of work with training and credentials that said, I'm an expert DE&I. We've had to kind of learn it along the way. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting for your lessons, my lessons, and the lessons of others to kind of gather them and really help us understand the job, because your job sounds a lot like my job.
Your
Sounds
job
a
is
lot
going to
like
make my job a lot easier.
Oh, good. Yeah.
It's the standard. It's the standard.
That's right. I hope so. But I too wish you good health as well. Thank you.
I'll just round out a comment on the fact that accountability is in your name. You're right, and you're living it, and you're demanding it. So I just applaud that. So just want to acknowledge.
And I want to wish you good health as well, and you're very inspiring.
Isn't this panel just amazing? They're all bringing it. We're not done, but they're bringing it. All right, so we're getting ready to go to a turn where I'm going to ask all of the panelists for what they'd like to tell you they think is the most important call to action that any of us could undertake to achieve a more diverse and inclusive workforce. And while the step analogy is important, you know we need it all, and we need it all now. It's like breathing. I need that second breath too. But I'm going to start here with you, Toshiba. What is it that is the most important call to action everyone in the audience or online should be thinking about or trying to help stimulate in some way about creating a more diverse workforce?
For me, for how I feel is say what you mean and mean what you say. So if we're going to demonstrate and wanting to be impactful and make change, we have to put the plan in place of what's coming out in 2023. I think that will be helpful in many organizations with Black nurses, brown nurses, Latino nurses coming into the field, especially being new. You know, I remember first starting out, I heard the term from a nurse manager, well, have you heard it's okay to accept that type of behavior because nurses eat their young? That's a very that's an unexcusable excuse. And that's something that can deter a person being brand new into this occupation away. They put in a lot of work, a lot of money to get where they are, and to say something like that, you know, was not encouraging. But, you know, to have that mentorship, to have that support, to have assistance and financial education, you know, moving forward to, you know, go further in your nursing status. You know, if you want to go be an RN, a nurse practitioner, you know, ultimately that's my goal. But right now, my standpoint is working in a community-based facility that does not offer tuition assistance at my level of nursing, not till I get to an RN level. So I feel kind of stagnated right now.
You know this is being recorded, so people need to hear this wonderful, amazing person and all of what you have to offer, sir. So it's an incredible thing to share, but it's also good just for the universe at large to know your story isn't the only story that's like this. There are a lot of people who can't wait to give, and you have a lot to give. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Mary Jo?
I'd like to take the liberty to take two, because you said one action. And because I had an action in my mind, and I'm like, I want to change it now. So the first action was data. We all have to get seriously focused on data, because data is what's going to be able to show that impact. So, okay, we got data out of the way. My other message, and I think it's really the leadership shadow that we all have accountability for. And there was a phrase I heard of, what we permit is what we promote. And so take that as kind of a credo of what we permit is what we promote, and then also bring data into the forefront.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go back to why we are here today, and actually the purpose of the program, which is improving diversity as a way of addressing healthcare equity. It's not a notion. It's not, oh, maybe they're related. It's a strategy. And the Joint Commission standards are not going to tell organizations to improve diversity. And I'm talking about diversity from the front line to the governing body. The American Hospital Association has data, and it's close to 90% Caucasian at the governing body level across the country. So when we are talking about improving diversity, let's make it the strategy. Let's not limit it to nursing, although we know it's a critical component of what we have to do. But we got to get it in the boardroom and in the C-suite as well.
Thank you very much.
I would say continue to be intentional. While we want this work to weave into all areas, and because we want it to be sustainable, if we don't keep our eye on the ball, it will fade. So we want to make sure that we continue to be accountable, that it's data-driven, that we continue to measure the metrics, because if we, as you said, if we don't measure, it doesn't matter. So intentionality.
These are just amazing things, so if I have it right.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Please,
You're
go,
off script, so I'll go off
Go,
script.
go. Bring it, bring it.
What's your advice?
It has to be intentional. I'm very passionate about leadership. Leadership makes a difference. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer for AHIP. We have about 130 members. They touch a few hundred million people. That's important. I use my voice, but I'm not the only one. But it's important. When you look at our members, regardless of what they look like, I've had some of the most inspiring conversations with our members. It's amazing. They are bringing it in a good way. More to be done, but leadership really, really does matter. And remember this, I'm a nerd, so I think about science and physics. I love physics. Just bear with me. But it has to do with escaping gravity. And I'm reading something one night I thought was fascinating. And that was that you think when a rocket is taking off, it has to go really, really fast to escape gravity, but that's not true. It can travel any speed, even 1 mile an hour. But the one thing it can't do is it can't run out of fuel. So whatever you're doing, do not give up, do not get tired. Good people cannot get tired. So that's what I would offer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this brings us to the end. I see I'm getting flagged here. I think we managed somehow or another to get on here. I told you we were going to have fun. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists today.